Welcome to Dementia-Friendly Prince George's County, Maryland Northern Sector webinar series for caregivers. Today's topic is Managing Money, a Caregiver Guide to Finances, sponsored by Prince George's County Government and the Department of Family Services.
This evening's program is designed for people who provide care for someone living with Alzheimer's, other forms of dementia, or other chronic illnesses. And throughout this evening's program, you see videos or dementia care experts, as well as real caregivers. Unfortunately, we've had some challenges with the videos, so I'm just going to briefly summarize what some of those videos indicate. We'll also go through a number of activities, and those activities we're actually going to be following up the presentation, sharing Mr. Watson, who's program manager with the Alzheimer's Association. We'll be following up to ensure all participants in this evening's program get all the materials referenced in this evening's presentation. Let's move to the next slide. Here we just want to point out two things. One, this project was supported in part by a grant. And we also want to make sure that you understand that what you're hearing and seeing this evening, the Alzheimer's Association is presenting general information on legal, financial, and medical issues. It's important to note that this information is not meant to take the place of professional advice. Laws are different in every state and are constantly changing. If you have specific legal, financial, or medical questions, you should talk to professionals such as attorneys, financial planners, and clearly your respective healthcare providers before acting on any of the information that we're going through in this evening's program. Also, we'd like to thank a number of individuals and organizations that have helped with this program. So we're going to show the slide that just indicates some of the organizations that were a part of the steering committee. If we can go to the next slide. So we see the AARP, Caregiver Action Network, the National Alliance for Caregiving, SAGE, the Bob Gilead, TIAA, and so on. So we had a lot of good input from different organizations. And next we're going to the next slide, which talks about our learning objectives for this evening. And our hope this evening is to go through the following: describing how caregiving affects finances, list the legal and financial documents caregivers should put in place, prepare for useful discussions about financial decisions and planning, identify steps to lower the chances of financial fraud and abuse, and finally begin to create a backup plan in case you can no longer provide the care to your loved one. Moving on to our next slide, we're going to go through some key terms. You may hear the word caregiver or care partner. The word caregiver describes a family member, friend, or legal guardian who supports someone with their health needs and well-being. Caregiving often includes assistance with activities of daily living, such as bathing, dressing, as well as activities such as paying bills, shopping, or managing money. On occasion, some people may also hear or prefer the term care partner, which is often used to describe someone who supports a person living with Alzheimer's in the early stages of the disease, when that person might be able to articulate their needs, be engaged in daily activities, and may not need much help or assistance. For example, they may be able at that stage to pay their own bills or take care of and manage their money, but they can still benefit from help from family members, guidance, if you will. And in terms of finances, we're referring to money and things that are worth money. This includes household cash flow, bank accounts, credit cards, loans, insurance policies, and things of that nature. Financial literacy means understanding how to manage money, such as handling day-to-day expenses and how to plan for the future. It is the ability to make informed and effective decisions about money that is so critical. We're going to move on to the next set of slides. And here we're talking about the cost of money, the cost of caring, if you will. Our financial decisions and actions can have a significant impact on our lives, both now and in the future. Financial literacy is especially important for caregivers, no matter which illness the person may be struggling with, because it provides them with the knowledge and skills needed to better support themselves and others. So let's quickly go through a quiz, but I'm going to go ahead for the sake of time and just give you the answer to this particular quiz. And the answer to this particular quiz, the correct answer in terms of what percentage of caregivers have out-of-pocket costs as a result of caregiving, it's 78%. According to the AARP, their report indicated that more than 3/4 of caregivers have out-of-pocket costs as a result of caregiving. This includes household expenses like mortgage payments, home modifications, as well as medical expenses like copayments, medical equipment, or traveling to and from doctor's appointments. And now we're going to talk about the impact on employment for caregivers. We'll go to the next slide. And in terms of impact, caregiving can impact finances in a number of ways. Because of the intense amount of time people spend providing care, caregiving may affect a person's employment. Many caregivers end up cutting their hours. They may have to, unfortunately, take time off, retire early, or quit their jobs altogether. And these decisions can mean lost income, more debt, difficulty saving for retirement, or cutting back on other costs. Many people don't realize how expensive it can be to take care of others. And in this video, which unfortunately, again, we can't show you, her name is Kim B. She is a caregiver that talks about how expensive it was taking care of her husband and what she had to do in terms of taking on additional income through a part-time job to support her family, given the loss of income from her husband and his illness. Okay, so we're going to now talk about the as we go to the next slide, the impact of caregiving. Caregiving can impact caregivers' health tremendously. Caregiving and managing financial challenges has a major impact on a caregiver's health. There may be high levels of feeling overwhelmed, stressed, burdened. There may be a tremendous sense of exhaustion. There may be a sense of uncertainty and stress. And caregivers may put off taking care of their own needs by skipping medical appointments, not getting enough sleep, and things of that nature. And when caregivers don't take care of themselves, their own health can get worse, leading to additional medical expenses and financial challenges as well. And now we're going to move on to the next slide, as we're going to talk about how Alzheimer's disease affects finances. Okay, going on to the next slide. This one, again, the reality is that Alzheimer's is not, and I can only re-emphasize that again, Alzheimer's is not a part of the normal aging process. Alzheimer's is a progressive and fatal brain disease. Symptoms usually develop slowly and get worse over time, becoming severe enough to affect activities of daily living. And while the greatest known risk factor for Alzheimer's is increasing age, the disease, again, is not a part of the normal aging process. Most individuals with the disease are 65 or older. After age 65, the risk of developing Alzheimer's doubles every 5 years. After age 85, the risk is about 1 in 3. However, there can be early onset Alzheimer's or early dementia for those less than the age of 65. Alzheimer's not only affects people's memory, as we go to the next slide. Alzheimer's, in addition to affecting memory, also affects an individual's ability to think. It impacts their behavior. It also impacts their ability to manage money. In fact, studies have shown that trouble managing bills and other financial obligations can sometimes be an early sign of dementia. So you may see a loved one not being able to manage their money, not being able to balance their checkbook, or their checks are bouncing, or they're doing other things that are demonstrative of having some challenges financially. This is another important reason to understand how the disease can impact finances. Quickly, I just want to talk about the stages of Alzheimer's as we go to the next slide. Alzheimer's disease usually progresses slowly through these three stages. There's an early stage. Again, often you may not notice things other than the person having difficulty remembering people's names. They may not remember where they are. They may have challenges with some activities of daily living. But in the middle stage, clearly there's major issues. They may not indeed be able to dress themselves. They may not be able to remember where they are. They cannot remember loved ones. And then the late stages, their activities of daily living are majorly compromised. Not only are they not able to dress, they may not be able to feed themselves. There's issues of incontinence, things of that nature. On average, a person with Alzheimer's lives 4 to 8 years after diagnosis, but some people live 20 years or more, depending on other factors. And as the person advances through the disease and their care needs increase, so does the cost of care. Let's talk again about the impact on the ability to manage money as we go to the next slide. In the beginning, people living with Alzheimer's may start to have trouble managing their money or remembering to pay bills. And as the disease gets worse, they will no longer be able to communicate their wishes to family and friends to make important decisions about financial or other legal matters. Many people avoid financial planning because they think it might cause a sense of fear or anxiety, but it's critical to prepare for future costs, which can help to lower stress. Early planning is especially important for a person living with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia because it allows them to participate in decisions about finances and future care. So again, they're care partners as they have an opportunity to participate and vocalize and share what their hopes and aspirations are. As we go to the next slide, this little graph clearly shows that there's a major impact as expenses increase, income decreases. And as we discussed earlier, many caregivers experience financial problems because they have to reduce their hours at work or take time off. And as the disease progresses, caregivers will need to pay for services or support for the person living with Alzheimer's. And then this next video, again, unfortunately we can't play it, but Rebecca's talking about how as her husband's illness increased and she had to get home health care aids, there was various medications, they had to tap his retirement early to help pay for additional expenses. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Talking about some of the unique challenges of dementia caregivers. Caregiving for a person with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia poses other unique challenges. Dementia caregivers spend more than $11,000 a year in out-of-pocket expenses, nearly twice as much as non-dementia caregivers. And these challenges, along with the stresses of caregiving, can lead to increased depression or anxiety. Believe it or not, 30 to 40% of caregivers for people living with dementia experience depression, while another 44% have anxiety. Because about 2/3 of dementia caregivers are women, they are more likely to experience the stress of caregiving. Let's learn about some other caregivers who face unique challenges. And so again, we're going to go to this quick slide that talks about people younger than 65. And the reality is that it's true that you can develop Alzheimer's younger than age 65. And while older age is the greatest risk factor for Alzheimer's in most individuals living with dementia are older adults, people younger than 65 can also develop Alzheimer's. And this form, as I mentioned earlier, is known as younger onset Alzheimer's, sometimes known as early onset. One of the things I didn't share earlier One of the reasons I was so motivated to help as a volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association is that unfortunately, my late wife developed early onset dementia at the age of 53 and lived up until age 62. And her illness continued to progress to the point that she passed away in 2017 from complications of Alzheimer's. So it was shocking that at age 53, she developed early onset dementia. So that can happen. Again, it can be related to environmental factors. It can be related to familial factors. And indeed, in my late wife's case, her mother also in her 80s had developed dementia. So whether or not there was truly some form of genetic component, we'll never know, as I did not have an autopsy. Moving on to the next set of slides, we're going to talk about younger onset and that group of individuals, how they're impacted financially. Also members of the LGBTQ and others group, as well as the low income group. So first, let's talk about people living with younger onset Alzheimer's and their caregivers. Many of these individuals report losing or quitting one or more jobs prior to their diagnosis because their cognitive challenges affected them at work. And as a result, these individuals are not able to maximize benefits from their employer, such as disability insurance, family and medical leave, or continued health coverage through COBRA. People living with younger onset Alzheimer's and their caregivers ultimately have less time to plan for the future, including saving for retirement. So again, and we'll get into this, the critical need being proactive, and whether we're talking about dementia and Alzheimer's, but any other chronic illness, or any illness for that matter, it's critical to early on consider financial planning and financial resources that can help sustain you when these sorts of major health issues emerge. And in terms of early onset and younger onset, these caregiver partners face unique challenges because of their age and stage in life. Care partners may have to return to work because their hours or another job may get impacted. There may be a loss of income while taking on additional family responsibilities. And this is especially true if the person living with the disease worked a job that provided most of the financial support for the family. So imagine, if you will, they are the predominant quote unquote breadwinner, or their family health insurance is under their name. And so that majorly impacts things. And many of these care partners still have children at home. So sometimes people are faced with being quote unquote in the sandwich generation. They're taking care of a loved one, an older family member or parent, or they may be still trying to raise their children, high school, preparing for college, things of that nature. Because of the financial strain of the disease, they may no longer be able to start or continue saving for their children's education and other expenses like family vacations or hobbies. And due to their age, these care partners may still have financial obligations. There may be a mortgage or a car payment or loans or other debts. Many resources for assistance and support require that an individual is 65 or older. There is a 2-year waiting period between when a person is placed on Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI, and when they are eligible for Medicare. In the meantime, the person living with younger onset Alzheimer's has to secure other health insurance coverage. This can impact the entire family if the individual was, again, the primary insurance provider. And now we're going to go on to talk about the LGBTQ community. Members of the LGBTQ community are more likely to be single. They often live alone and are less likely to have children. This might mean that these individuals have a smaller support network, which can present difficulties as Alzheimer's progresses. And since the person living with the disease will eventually need someone else to take over paying their bills and making other financial decisions, that might be a tremendous challenge. It's important for members of the LGBTQ community to have financial plans in place, because it helps make sure that any caregivers who are not relatives can access the person's money if need be, and when the person needs help in managing it. So again, the critical need to be proactive. And then finally, we're going to talk about people from lower income households and how they're impacted financially as well, and the importance of financial preparedness. In this instance, they may be unemployed or have part-time employment or low-paying jobs that are less likely to offer retirement benefits or allow them to save for the future. They may struggle to make ends meet and have limited financial resources to pay for monthly bills. And this financial strain can mean relying on credit cards or taking out loans with exorbitant interest rates. This results in added stress, but less ability to pay for these resources. And families with limited income may qualify for care and support services that are offered at little or no cost or at reduced rates. And so it's important to check with local government agencies, whether they're in PG County or Montgomery County or the state of Maryland, in terms of what resources might be available. And now we're going to talk about the benefits of early financial planning. If we can move to that slide. We've got another quiz, but here's the reality. The question is, who do you think can benefit from putting financial plans in place for the future? And the bottom line reality is everyone. Regardless of whether people have a lot of money or investments or stock, regardless of whether a person is retiring soon or they're caregivers or they're of low-income households, everyone can benefit. Many people assume that financial planning is only to help people who make a lot of money. Or those who have less means. But there are benefits to putting financial plans in place as soon as possible for both the person receiving care and for the caregiver. So we're going to go to the next slide and we'll go talk through some of the benefits of early planning. And in early planning, being proactive, if you will, again, as I mentioned earlier, as a care partner, you're knowing that person's wishes, how they would wish their assets to be divvied up. They don't have much in retirement. Maybe they pull it early. Maybe do some other things to help manage the overall household expenses. Knowing how to handle financial issues and pay for care is often critical, and knowing these things earlier. There's less chance of making costly or unwise decisions, such as taking money out of life insurance or stopping insurance premium payments or cashing in on 401ks if, again, people are proactive and they're putting in place some thoughts about financial planning early on. The next two videos we'll skip, but Miss Drew is with the Alzheimer's Association. Again, she just underscores the importance of early financial planning. And Gail T, in that video, talks about how her and her husband, unfortunately her husband was the one with early onset dementia, had in place plans for early retirement if that came about. And so they were proactive, if you will, in talking through and being prepared for those issues. Going on to the next slide. And we're skipping this video. That was Miss Drew. And we'll go on to the next slide. And we're going to talk about conversations. And I know sometimes, having these conversations can be challenging. Clearly, talking about money can make people feel anxious or uncomfortable. It may be hard to know how to start these conversations, but there are some things you can do to make them more positive and productive. So moving on to the next slide. Here's some things that can help make the conversation both more comfortable and more confident, and maybe having some positive outcomes. First, write down your goals and what financial documents you will want to review and discuss. So in other words, do you have access to your 401k or retirement or savings account? Identify which family members or close friends should be a part of the financial planning conversations. These should be individuals that the person living with the disease trusts and who know about the person's medical and financial situation. And have the discussion at a time and place that the person is as attentive as possible, do it in a calm manner, do it in a quiet place. Clearly, this allows for the reduction of stress and anxiety. Also, encourage the person to be honest about their assets. And I know sometimes that might be difficult. So maybe sometimes we need to start the conversation by talking about what I would call our own financial intimacy. And I know talking about finances is another form of intimacy. You know, sometimes couples don't fully disclose they've got a sacred savings account or checking account or rainy day fund on the side, but it's time when these issues arise to put all the financial cards, if you will, on the table. It's also important as you begin the conversation and encourage that person to be honest, as I said, by you yourselves being honest about your own assets and expenses. And it's important too not to rush through these kinds of conversations. And it may take many different conversations before you get to all the details necessary. So maybe focusing on easy wins first. Being able to identify exactly where all the bank accounts are and their numbers, or the savings accounts and what have you. So you know you have access to it. You can put your fingertips on them, if you will. Going on to the next slide. Here's some additional tips. Consider these as part of the discussion about someone's finances. It's important, again, to be patient and understanding. It can be hard to ask for and accept help managing finances. So sometimes, again, somebody may say, you know, I know how to manage my checkbook. I know how to manage my finances. I've done it all my life. Get out of my business, that sort of thing. But, you know, people living with dementia, particularly early on stages, they're going to show some signs that they're not doing well with their finances. It's important, too, as we're having this discussion with our loved ones, to ask them what their wishes are for their finances and their future. Explain that planning early is important. And don't judge the person and their decisions. Everyone handles money in their own way. If the person has difficulty communicating, it may be helpful to use short sentences and simple terms, and maybe even writing down short sentences and terms so that that way they can both hear you as you're saying it and visually see it. So, you know, kind of multi-stimulation, multi-sensory, if you will. It's important too to pause at times to make sure that the person understands what is being discussed. And you may have to repeat yourself several times and, you know, check in. Do you understand what I'm saying about, you know, your finances or your checking account, savings account, things of that nature? And again, if the conversation becomes stressful, take a break. Maybe reschedule for another time. Always try to end the conversation on a positive note. Again, because it's a difficult conversation to have. And then checking in regularly. A person's financial situation can change as care needs change. Plan to discuss finances once a year. So, you know, we always go for our annual wellness checks or physicals. It's also important to do our own annual financial fitness check-ins, if you will. Where are we with our finances? Where are we with our savings, with our retirement? You know, being able to have these conversations puts us in a better place to be considerate of how we're going to manage things. In the video we're going to skip, Kimby said that she and her husband talked through a lot of different things about his retirement, his finances. They pulled out all their documents. They knew where they were. They locked them in a file cabinet that they both had access to. And they also created an Excel spreadsheet so they knew where everything was, things of that nature. And as I mentioned earlier, moving on to the next slide, starting the conversation, starting that financial intimate conversation on a positive note. This builds confidence and connection with the person you're caring about. For example, you could say something to the effect, I've always admired the way you've handled your finances, and I want to learn more about what works well for you. I've noticed you seem to be worried about finances these days. What worries you the most? Can you share that with me? I'm here to support you. I'm here to help. While I respect your privacy, it would give me some peace of mind to know what you're going through. You know, what's your financial plans? How can I be of help? Let's partner. I'll share again what my financial situation is, where that secret financial account is, or extra checking account I have for the rainy day. So, you know, being able to have that kind of intimate conversation. And as I mentioned, as we go to the next slide, starting the conversation about your own financial wishes. So being able to say, I want to talk to you about my finances, or I really want you to understand my wishes for the future. Let's talk about how I want my finances to be managed. And so again, you're modeling, if you will, you're being intimate, and hopefully in turn, your partner will be intimate and sharing what's going on. Moving on to the next slide. So we're going to talk about avoiding financial abuse and fraud, and this is so critical. Let's start this module by seeing what you know about financial abuse. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and read the answer for the sake of time. On average, when a person is over the age of 80 or older, they become often, unfortunately, victims of financial abuse, fraud, or scams. And believe it or not, each year these individuals lose on average $39,200. And studies have shown that financial exploitation is the most common form of elder abuse, and yet only a small fraction of these incidents are reported. So let's talk more specifically about financial abuse and dementia as we move on to the next slide. Financial crimes against older Americans are a growing problem. You get that telemarketer that's coming up with some scheme or scam, or they see a lot of things on TV and they end up calling and getting themselves into some quagmire of financial situation that's not good for them. And this abuse can occur anywhere, including at home or in care settings. So being careful even in nursing homes, assisted living facilities, things of that nature. People living with dementia are especially at high risk of becoming victims of fraud and financial abuse because they may not remember or may not report the abuse or understand that someone is indeed taking advantage of them because somebody has endeared themselves to that individual. They're thinking, oh, they're being nice and sweet, and so they're divulging things and giving up money, things of that nature. And as memory and other thinking skills decline, they may struggle to make good financial decisions, making them more vulnerable to scams and fraud. And we're going to skip the video from Miss Ruth Drew. She was just talking again about how people are in fact impacted by these scams. Signs that a person may be having problems with their money. So here are some examples. You start to see piles of unopened bills. The utilities may have been impacted, the electricity or gas, they may have been shut off or delayed because of unpaid bills. There may be large purchases. So, you're seeing a whole bunch of Amazon deliveries or other deliveries coming to the house. Buying the same thing more than once, or buying things that they don't need, like dog food when the person doesn't even have a pet. Giving money to every telemarketer who calls. Missing money or explain withdrawals from the person's bank account. And moving on to the next slide, lower risk of abuse and fraud. So here's some things as caregivers that we can do to reduce the person's risk of financial abuse or fraud. And you should include the person you're caring for in this process as much as possible so that they can help give some input about safety measures. So as an example, agreeing to charge or spend a limited amount on credit cards, creating a separate account where you can keep a very small agreed upon amount of money that the person can use for recreational activities, meals, etc. Maybe setting up auto pay for bills so they don't even have to worry about trying to write checks for utilities or the mortgage, things of that nature. And for yourselves as caregivers, setting up automatic notifications for withdrawals from banks or large purchases on credit cards. Requesting electronic banking credit card statements and watch for unusual purchases or changes. Also, signing up on the Do Not Call directory with the donotcall.gov, and ask credit card companies to stop sending balance transfer checks and opt out of future solicitations. Moving on to the next slide. Identifying financial and legal needs. So we'll move on to that. Many caregivers avoid or delay making financial and legal plans. It can feel stressful to think about the future, especially when you're caring for someone with a chronic illness. Jobs, family responsibilities, or other duties can make it hard to find the right time to organize financial and other legal matters for yourself and the one that you love. But as we've discussed previously, it's important to put plans in place as soon as possible. So again, the importance of being proactive. And you can make that process easier by breaking things down into manageable pieces, one task at a time. So now let's talk about some of these steps. So this is just an example. Look at income and spending. Write down cash in and out. See if there are places to cut back on spending, build up savings for unexpected cost. We're going to skip these two videos and move on to the next one. Taking an inventory of assets and debts. What are your assets? Anything owned that has value, like a house, a car, a bank account, things of that nature. And then what are your debt? Money that's borrowed and paid back over time, like credit cards, loans, things of that nature. So that's another thing in terms of organizing finances. Moving on to the next one, identifying the cost of care. Ongoing medical treatment. Somebody, what are their ongoing treatment needs? Do they have, as an example, diabetes or coronary disease, things of that nature? There may be prescriptions, and those prescriptions may or may not be covered through Medicare or insurance. Personal care supplies. Individuals, are they needing wheelchairs, other assistive devices to help them with ambulation or other activities of daily living? In-home care services. So are you bringing in, a licensed practical nurse or other certified caregiver to help in the home, maybe with light cleaning, helping with medication reminders, or actually helping with actual activities of daily living, helping them to bathe, dress, feed, provide medication, things of that nature. Also, there may be the need, unfortunately, for actual full-time residential care services, whether or not that's in an assisted living facility or an actual nursing facility. Okay. And then finally, making arrangements for ongoing financial responsibilities. Who's going to take care of paying the bills, arranging for benefit claims, making investment decisions, and preparing the tax return? And we'll skip the activity. Mr. Watson with the Alzheimer's Association will be providing some materials that will be useful related to this evening's program. Here are some common financial resources we're wanting to talk about. Just give me 1 minute. So here are some of the following. In terms of personal resources, there could be income, there could be 401s, 401ks, and other retirement accounts, savings, stocks, bonds, or other personal property. Federal funding, such as Medicare Parts A and B and D, if somebody's 65 or older. If someone's a veteran, there could be veterans benefits available. Social Security disability insurance and the Compassionate Allowance Initiative. State funding sources like Medigap and Medicaid can be a resource, and you can find additional resources at benefitscheckup.org. Again, that's benefitscheckup.org. Some of these programs may be able to help pay for medication costs. They can help pay for transportation, meals, or more. Again, we'll provide materials, Mr. Watson will, so that you'll get the full packet. Also, we want to point out additional resources such as the Alzheimer's Association, which has a 24/7 helpline at 1-800-272-3900. Expert licensed counselors are available 24/7 at that helpline. They speak over 200 languages, and so that can be an additional resource to help talk through what you might need in terms of identifying common funding sources. So let's move to the next slide. So tips for legal planning. So we're going to quickly go through this. Legal planning ensures that you or a trusted family member or friend can make decisions for the person living with the disease when they can no longer make those decisions for themselves. Like we've discussed previously, making financial plans, it's important to make legal plans as early as you can so that everyone is well prepared. Putting legal plans in place doesn't have to be stressful or difficult. Getting legal advice and services from an attorney who specializes in elder law can be helpful. However, you can complete many legal documents on your own. And I wish to emphasize here, clearly each one of us have our own unique circumstances. So depending on your circumstance and depending on the complexity of your circumstance, some individuals may be able to go online and download things like a living will or medical power of attorney. But for others, given, again, their unique financial and legal situation, they may need an actual attorney to assist drafting those kinds of documents. We're going to talk now about what some of those documents might be. We're skipping the next video. So again, we've talked about this, but inventorying what you've got. Where are your legal documents? What do you have in place? What else do you need in place? Did you update your will, update power of attorney, things of that nature? At the most, making sure that you know where things are and that they're up to date. And we talked about the durable power of attorney for both finances and healthcare, and a living will. Living will meaning you make clear what your express wishes are as your health declines. Do you want palliative care? Do you want resuscitation? Do you want nourishment? Extraordinary means, things of that nature. So that's typically what a living will is. Moving on to the next slide. Here are various professionals. And again, hopefully Mr. Watson at the end of this evening's presentation can share this list, but the Alzheimer's Association, this Elder Care Locator, National Elder Care Law in terms of finances, the Association of Financial Planning Professionals, the Association of International Certified Professionals. So there are resources out there that can help assist you with legal and financial matters. So you don't have to do it alone. And it's often important to be able to have those kinds of resources available to you that you can make an informed decision. Next, we're going to quickly talk about creating a backup plan as we move to that slide. And in terms of creating a backup plan, talking with friends and family members about who can take over different caregiving responsibilities. If you yourselves, if you're the primary caregiver, if you're not able to for whatever reasons, your own health challenges, being out of town, things of that nature. This includes managing your own money and the money of the person living with the disease. Consider assigning responsibilities to more than one person if there are no other family members who are willing or able to help with these responsibilities. Work on creating a plan with the person you are caring for and possibly, again, consulting with an attorney. If you are the agent for the person's power of attorney, meaning you are the one who will make the financial, legal, and other medical decisions on their behalf, it's a good idea to designate a trusted backup agent in case something happens to you. Talk with the person you are caring for to determine who should carry out those responsibilities. And again, it's always critical to keep up-to-date information, a list of the person's medical information. This should include medications, the name and contact information of their healthcare providers, and anyone else involved in that person's care. Now we're wanting to circle back quickly as we move to the next slide about the importance of you as caregivers taking care of your own health. The best you can do for the person you are caring for is staying physically and emotionally strong. We often hear when we're on the airplane, when they're going through all the safety measures, what is the first thing one of the attendants on the airplane say? Put a mask over you as the oxygen mask drop, so that you're giving yourself oxygen, and then you can care for your little one or whomever else is with you. It's important to make sure you're keeping up with your own medical doctor's appointments, you're eating well, you're staying physically active. If need be, looking at respite care, other support services, so that if you need to step away, even if it's a day, or putting your loved one in a respite facility so that you can either go out of town, just take a day to break, breathe, that sort of thing. It's important to be able to say, I need help, and to acknowledge, receive it, accept it. It can be especially helpful to build a care team. So, sometimes we may be gruff and the rough one when we're dealing with our loved one, but somebody else, I know one of the support groups that I lead, the daughter is more easy spoken with the mom, and so she can convince the mom to go take a shower and get dressed, things of that nature. Whereas the husband, with that kind of former military voice, dear, go get dressed, and she's like, I'm not, it's almost as if he's yelling at her, that sort of thing. So being able to have somebody that can join you as part of that care team and switch off duty so that, again, you're not feeling fully overwhelmed or stressed, and somebody can be of a resource. And speaking of resource, besides the list of resources that was shared earlier at the beginning of this evening's program, the Alzheimer's Association also has free tools, including an online care team. There's calendars that can help organize friends and family members. So there's a lot of resources on our website, alz.org, that can be of assistance. And so our final slide, again, our 24/7 helpline, our online alz.org, and also the alz.org/CRF, which stands for Community Resource Finder. That can help find local resources against assisted living facilities, in-home healthcare, things of that nature. So why don't we stop here and let's entertain some questions.